to Cheese in the Morning. At least it's morning to him. The all-new Fun 93.5 FM, 1090 AM.
9:07 on your Wednesday, and yes, we have the mayor of Charles County, Stephen Chambers, over here. Good morning, Stephen.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm doing well. I'm glad it's a little bit cooler. I mean, you ever think, well, it's only in the 80s. That's a nice break from what we've been having, though.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. Okay. Of course, we'd like to have you in on a regular basis anyway, talk about things going on in Hartsville and Charles County. We'll want to do some of that. And we're going to conclude with this is your chance to plead to voters why they should vote for you. Early voting starts on the 15th, which is Friday of next week. And, of course, Election Day is on August the 4th. So I guess let's touch a few things. I told you when I got up this morning, I looked out the window, and they were working on the red light there at the corner of McMurray and Andrews Avenue. What was going on there?
They usually work on lights if we're having timing issues or something like that. They work on those. So that's usually what they are. I'm hoping in the future we can update the control box and everything at that light. Right now, that control box, I believe, is from 1985. And so you can't really change the timing very easily for the lights. With the new work that's being done down at the Broadway-McMurray intersection by the First National Bank, they're going to be putting in new turning lights and all traffic lights and all that stuff to accommodate the four-lane intersection. And I'd like to update our lights at the Andrews Avenue intersection. That way we can do what's called traffic signal optimization, which means in the morning you can have a green light longer going from east to west to help move traffic through, and then in the afternoon you can reverse that and have it going from west to east, that the green light will be longer to help move traffic through. We just can't do that with our current equipment there. It's too old to do it, but if you update it, then we'll be able to do that.
It's been there since, you say, 85?
Yeah, I believe that particular control box is from 1985, but I think that's true. I know one of the control boxes was from 1985, but I believe they're both around from the same time. They're pretty old.
While we're talking about the intersection, I'm assuming there's no discussion of widening that intersection, because I know somebody that lives right there on the corner.
I've been talking to TDOT. There's a federal grant that's come available called Safe Routes to Schools, and it's a little bit longer title, but that's basically what it is. And since that is a state highway, I'd have to get the state to agree to it. So far, they've said that they'd do a letter of support. But I'd like to file for that grant to do a study. I would like to make it from the 231-25 intersection all the way down to where 141 is going to come in to 10 and 25 when they do this project across the river, and see what kind of improvements can be done through there, whether it's widening, traffic lights, these kind of things. But I'd have to get the state to go along with it. And as long as it was not their money, they seem to be real receptive to it. So I'm hoping we can apply for it. It's a very long shot because that's a competitive grant across the entire United States. But, if you don't apply for it, you won't get it.
Well, obviously, you know what I'm talking about. If they at that intersection go north, they're in my yard. So we don't need to do that for a few more years. What are some other things? Well, I got to ask you about the rock quarry. You can say as much or as little about that as you would like. So what's the situation there?
The situation there is, and I'm going to have to say it very little because there's, due to the threat of litigation, the county attorney has advised me not to speak about the rock quarry. I will say there's valid concerns looking at the rock quarry. But in my role as county mayor, I need to make sure that we are doing everything the legal way and doing everything properly, and that's what we're working on. And I can't really speak to it much more than that due to advice from legal counsel. Okay.
There is a proposed gas pipeline to run from, let me get this right, from Trouser County to Kingston.
Yes, sir.
Because the power plant there at Kingston burns coal.
Yep.
And in so many years, they are supposed to go away from coal burning and looking at another way to generate electricity. And they are looking at running this gas line from Hartsville to Kingston. And I know there was a meeting That was what? That was last Thursday night at First Baptist Church. I drove by just to see how many cars were out there. Did you attend that meeting or?
I did. It was not so much a meeting as just kind of an open house. They had displays set up, going through, answering questions, what the pipeline is, how's it working right of ways, how do they check it, maintain it, those kind of things. So they had individual stations where they would answer questions, whatnot. I think they had invited all the landowners who may be affected to come and talk to them and those kind of things. And then other people also could be there. I mean, it was open to the public. So I did go to that and I asked some questions, and they firmed up the route a little bit more. Last time they were through here, there were like 3 different options. Now I think they've got it where it's pretty much going to parallel the existing line where it can. And they're looking at putting in a compressor station here. Right now it'd be off of Puryear's Bend Road on some property that's right next to where the water department owns property, where we're looking at building a new water storage tank as well as a new water treatment plant. So they did firm up the route and look at that. But yeah, like you said, it's supposed to go it's actually going to start a little bit east of Bass Road, hook into the current Texas Eastern line, and then go all the way over to Kingston to feed that plant as they transition from coal burning to this natural gas.
Okay, Bass Road.
It starts at Payne Store.
Okay. Right
there behind, it used to be Payne Store. There's a road it shoots off, branches off of 231 and kind of parallels it a little bit. That's Bass Road.
Okay.
So it'll be a little bit east of that.
If you go to what we call Payne Store intersection, turn right going toward Westmoreland, there's a road that angles off to the right. That's what you're talking about.
Yes, sir. That's it.
So that's where it would start?
It's actually going to start not exactly at that intersection, just off that road. It's actually a little bit to the east. It's maybe 2 or 3 parcels off of Bass Road to your east. So it's going to originate there from where the current Texas and Eastern gas line runs through.
I see. And a compressor station, what'd you say, around Puryear's Bend?
Yeah, off of Puryear's Bend Road.
Okay. With that compressor station being in Trousdale County, that tax money for us?
It is tax money for us, and there's also a current compressor station on that side as well, so they'll be building one next to the current one, because they already have an existing line through there that goes east, but it won't be going to Kingston like this one will. So this compressor station should be built kind of right next to the one that's currently there to service this new line.
And this is a few years down the road. How many years down the road are we talking about?
I can't give an exact estimate because that's to be approved by the federal government, and they have to approve TVA's transition plan.
Right.
And there's a lot of regulatory hurdles it has to go through. The Federal Energy Regulatory Agency, or it ends with a C, so it's not an agency, but it's called FERC. Right now, they're in the pre-application period. There was a representative from FERC at this open house taking comments on the line. And so it's got a long process it has to go through. They haven't even filed the application yet, so it'll be years away.
Right, all right. We're visiting here with Mayor Stephen Chambers. While we're talking down at Payne Store, we continue to see some work on the truck stop. Looks like maybe slow. I don't see it's making a lot of progress, but it's making some. So do you know when that is supposed to be up and running?
I do not. I don't have a firm date on that.
Okay.
And right at this point, given construction and everything, I don't know that the firm date would be really all that firm.
Right. But there's a lot of traffic that goes up and down 231. I think that could bring a lot of tax money into the county.
That and if you look at the numbers, because I went back and again had talked to TDOT about trying to see what we can do to improve that intersection for traffic flow. And I've kind of looked at their numbers. You can access what's called your annual average daily traffic numbers online. And I compared what their numbers were for them. They did the estimate or the numbers in 2021 versus 2019. So I put it pre-COVID because you saw a drop. As everybody was staying home, you saw a drop in traffic during 2020 all the way up till people started going back to work. And in one part of the intersection, I think there was a 14% increase in traffic versus pre-COVID. So 2019 numbers, there was a 14% increase in last year. So that's just due to a lot of growth we're seeing in that area. Plus also people coming from Sumner County or Macon County coming down that way. But looking at those traffic numbers, you've got retail groups that look at traffic flow and rooftops where new houses are going. And so we're starting to see a lot more interest in the intersection. You've got that mini truck stops, what I call it, going in there. There's going to be a new Dollar General a little bit south of that intersection.
Right.
So I think we're going to see more development at that intersection as you go forward, or around that intersection.
You mentioned Dollar General. They're looking down there, like you said, on 231 South. There's one being built out here at, what's that, Hickory Ridge.
Yes, sir.
And, of course, we already have one over here in the Foodland Shopping Center.
Mm-hmm.
When the other new stores are built, do you have any information? Are they going to continue with the one that's beside Subway?
I've heard conflicting information on that, so I don't know if it's going to continue or not. I've heard yes to both ways, so
Right.
I'm not really sure on that.
Right.
I would think it'd make more sense if they're going to build a new store, probably transition their staff from the existing one out to the new one.
Right.
But, I don't make those calls. That's somebody higher up at Dollar General.
Right. Charleston County collecting more sales tax than we used to?
We are collecting more sales tax, and that's due to right before COVID in October of 2019, the state started collecting online sales tax. So if you buy something from Amazon or something online like that from a vendor that's a certain size, then they collect sales tax and remit it to the state of Tennessee, and the state of Tennessee sends it to us. So we've seen an increase in sales tax from online, but also our local businesses are seeing more sales tax generated, particularly grocery stores or anything like that. During COVID, when people were staying home, their sales tax went up pretty dramatically. So we are seeing a growth in sales tax, and hopefully that continues. And we're also looking at ways to try to bring more tourism here, because tourists
Right.
come in, spend tax dollars,
And go home.
and go home. So you don't have to educate their children or anything like that. So we're trying to find ways to improve tourism. Been talking to the Corps of Engineers about leasing Taylor's Landing, Pine Cove, and Second Creek from them, so we can start applying for grants and making improvements there, because they're very, very restricted as far as parking, particularly Taylor's Landing and Pine Cove.
Right.
I've been out to Pine Cove numerous times over the last few months, and it's just everybody's wanting to go out there and launch their boat, but there's really hardly anywhere to park. You've got the Cove Restaurant out there that's having parking problems,
Right.
do all that. So I've talked to the Corps, and they would be receptive to us looking at how to expand parking areas, this kind of stuff. You'd have to do some environmental studies and a study to make sure there's not endangered bats or owls in the trees and this kind of stuff. But they are receptive to doing it, and I think there's a pathway there to expand those areas. And then we need to market those to try to get more people come into Trousdale County. And as you said, they'll come in, hopefully buy gas here, buy bait here, maybe eat at the Cove, those kind of things.
Right. Right. Is the Corps of Engineers one of the most difficult agencies to work with?
They are difficult. They have a lot of regulatory burdens that's put on them, so of course they pass on to us if we're dealing with them. I give an example at Taylor's Landing. I want to expand the parking area into what used to be the old archery range.
Right.
Well, to do that, since that is now a national battlefield, I have to have an archaeological survey study done to make sure there's nothing of historical value in there. I propose putting in walking trails a little on that. If you're looking north from that, going back towards what is town, I propose putting a walking trail through there. I figured if they can put a road right through the middle of Gettysburg, surely we can put a walking trail on our battlefield with interpretive signs. But of course, they want you to look at different archaeological study for that. Want you to consider maybe a floating walkway, so you're basically building like a little walking path that's on stilts or something through there, so that you're not disturbing the ground. There's all kinds of things you got to look at. Environmental studies you got to do, because it was declared an environmentally sensitive area. And I've told them, there's already a trail that was there. It was an archery trail. I said, it's already there. It needs rehabilitated and taken care of. Right now, I'm not proposing anything new on that area. I'd just like to rehabilitate that trail. So surely just going in there and fixing an existing trail won't be that big, but you still got to do in phase one environmental, and then look at other kind of environmental concerns. And so it is a long process, but being a federal agency, they got to abide by all the federal environmental regulations and historical regulations, and they pass through to us. So there's a lot of hurdles you got to jump through. But
Yeah. While we're talking sales tax, I was talking to Dr. Satterfield, Clint Satterfield, some time ago, and he was talking about the taxes that we collect. And one thing that he said that I guess I've never thought about is we don't have that big ticket item of like a car dealership or somebody selling a expensive lawnmower.
Right.
Those are things that we don't have.
Yeah, and that definitely hurts us because you get those larger items. As you get, like if you go to buy a car, you go to Lebanon, Gallatin, something like that, where they're getting your sales tax. Whereas no, we're not. And I know we used to have car dealerships. You know, we had Rickman, we had Cunningham, we had all these dealerships which were bringing in money at that time, and then they went away. Where we experienced our retraction there during when the TVA plant shut down and we lost the manufacturing plants and that kind of stuff. But yeah, we need to try to lure some of those, and then that is a long-term goal to get something like that for that sales some of these high-ticket items. And it just doesn't have to be a car dealership, just a furniture store. That would bring in more money.
Right.
So just trying to look at those items, and plus sporting goods. I've talked to people that are going to other counties to buy gloves for their children or something like that to play ball. Well, we need to find ways to try to get more of those there. And that tide is turning, particularly the last 2 or 3 months. We've had a lot more retail interested in us. Our drawback has been we don't have existing buildings for them to go into, so we're also trying to recruit commercial developers to go out and develop some of the commercial lots we have along the highway and to bring in retail that way. And with all their growth and everything we're seeing that we've already had, plus what's been proposed as far as new subdivisions and that whatnot coming in, we are seeing more interest from the retail side.
And when we talk about retail, one thing we talk about is restaurants. With the population that we have now, there are more restaurants looking at Charleston County, Hartsville, Charleston County?
There are more looking to move here. I had 2 that contacted my office that were interested in coming here. I just didn't have an available space for them to go into. So they are interested in coming here. And the request I get from a lot of people is they want more sit-down restaurants, but they don't want it to be Mexican since they've already got 3. They'd like some other kind of variety. And I do, let them know of our existing restaurants like Farmer's Harvest that's opened up, those kind of things.
Right.
But yeah, that is something we're looking at and trying to recruit those, and we are getting interest from them. So hopefully as we grow more, we'll get more firm interest. And just like I said, it's having a space for them to go into has been the drawback, and hopefully we're starting to see some momentum on that. And I think the next year or 2, you'll see a lot of movement in that area.
Yeah, and I've heard somebody say, it was probably you, that once you get around that 10,000 population, that it start opening the eyes of some other businesses that would look at Charleston County.
It does, and that's where I think we're seeing more interest now, because UT's current estimate for Charleston County is over 12,000 people. And even if you take out the 2,500 from the prison, that gets you to that 10,000 mark, whereas before we were around 99,110, I think, when we did the census in 2020. So the higher you get in those numbers, the more interest you're going to get. Plus, our proximity to some of these other areas, if you look at our labor force coming in versus going out, we do have 60% of our labor force is working outside the county right now.
What was that number again?
Yeah, 60%.
60%.
Yeah, are working outside the county, but one of the surprising things is I'm on a workforce development board, and they've been giving us numbers here coming out. Surprising things, we have a pretty high number of people coming from Sumner and Wilson County working here now. I'll assume those are at the prison, or at least a good part of those are at the prison, but they're also working in other communities here. So that's, if we get more industry here, which we are working on, I think we're going to see some more interest, movement on that as well, about getting more industry here. So you get more people coming in. Hopefully they'll give people that are living here business opportunities to work and live in Charleston County, and then they'll spend their money here. But also it'll bring people from other communities here to, like we said, bring in that sales tax, and then we don't have to educate their kids because they'll go back to Sumner or Wilson County.
Right. I see a lot of people from Macon County that work in Hartsville. Is that, you see the same thing?
Yeah, and like I said, breaking down those numbers, they kind of show you the number of people coming in from Sumner County, Wilson County, Macon County. They got it broke down, I think, to like the top 5. And those are some of the areas you see. And that's, of course, we got people that that live in Trousdale, that work in Smith County over at their industrial park over in Gorensville, or go up to Macon County. So, I mean, it flows. If you look at economic development, you have to actually look at it as a region. You can't look at your particular county, because if you look at what they call your labor shed, you just don't work on what your labor force is. You say, we've got X number of people within so many miles, and that's your labor shed, and you use that to market industry coming in.
We're visiting with Mayor Stephen Chambers. Let's talk about PowerCom a moment, and I've talked to you. Don McCoy has some big plans, And I heard you say one day, said this could be a game changer for Charleston County. So they were hoping to get up and running, gosh, I think maybe in the second quarter of, well, obviously it's going to take a while to get it built, but they were looking at, breaking ground early this year, and that didn't happen. So where are we in that process now?
There's still some things that have to be done site-wise that Tennessee Central needs to work on. I think there's some poles that are on one of the properties they're wanting to buy that we got to get moved off. It's the electric poles and this kind of thing we got to get moved because they're right in the middle of one of the areas they're looking at. So we got to get those moved, and we're working with Tri-County on that. So there's some little things we need to get addressed on the sites before they can start moving on it. So that we're in that stage right now. Don and all his partners are very interested in being here. They're still committed to being here. And, yeah, like I've told you before, I think that could be a game changer because they're looking at bringing 3 companies here. Now, obviously, they're going to start with 1 and try to build up, but they're talking between all 3 potential for 300 jobs, and that'll be a big asset out there to that PowerCom Park. Plus, there's also other things we're looking at. You know, it does have a barge access area out on the river that TVA used to bring in their equipment. So we're looking at ways to try to take advantage of that, and then that'll open up that site for shipping as well as some of these other things we're doing.
And we're not talking about minimum wage jobs either.
No, they're actually very high-paying jobs that are going to have required skill and these kind of things. And as you get into more skilled labor, you get higher wages.
Right. Of course, I got to ask you about the jail. That's always discussed here in Charleston County. So, what are we looking at there?
We just recently, as of last week, we picked our architectural firm. I still got to talk to them. I actually have a sit-down meeting with them. I'm supposed to talk to them actually after I get off the radio about when we can set a date for them to come down and see what kind of terms we're going to come to as far as pay and whatnot. So we are moving along with it. And once we get this architectural firm on board, they're going to help us start evaluating sites because we don't currently have a site that's big enough to accommodate the size facility we need. So we are working there. We have a County Corrections Partnership Committee that's worked with the Tennessee Corrections Institute, who is the agency that regulates the jails. And so they're working with us on that, and they're very pleased with our progress thus far. So as we start getting into actually talking about designing the jail, we're going to have all kinds of meetings. All the stakeholders can be there. You know, everybody's involved in the court system, county commissioners, planning commissioners. The public is more than invited to come in and put in their input to talk about what the facility is going to be as we go forward. So you're still looking at quite a while before you see any ground broken. There's a lot of planning and everything has to be done.
Right. You're running for re-election. I guess how many more houses? I'm sure you're seeing a lot more houses now as you did 4 years ago. Talk to me about that.
Well, I don't have the exact number from 4 years ago. That the voter list I got in March had 5,752 registered voters. And I think that's probably, if I remember correctly, that's up about 800 or so, maybe from 4 years ago, maybe more than that. And I suspect that's just gone up since I got it in March, and I think it's going to go up as you see it going forward. So that's just registered voters. That's not the number of houses. I think the number of houses now is well over 3,000 something. So it's with the time I got, I still got to go to the meetings and do the job and everything. So I really only have Saturday and a few hours on Sunday that I know are going to be open at door knock. And I think I calculated it out. It would take me like 6 to 7 months if I was doing it all Saturday and Sunday to talk to everybody.
I had Mr. Paxton in here last week, and he told me 6,034 registered voters in Charleston County.
That's gone up since March. So March it was 5,752. So.
Almost 350. It's gone up.
Yeah, and and there was people. There's probably been 3 that I've talked to here lately, going around and knocking on their doors that were moving in that day.
Right.
So the people that were living there moved out, and new people were moving in. Plus, you've got all the houses you can tell are just newly built or the ones that's being built. So there's a lot of new people moving in, and it's.
It's unbelievable. And we've had this discussion many times. We see people moving in here from Hendersonville, Mount Juliet, Nashville, but there are people here from California. There are people here from Texas.
Yeah, there are people here from places I wouldn't have thought. Montana, Wyoming, a lot coming in from Florida. And it's really interesting when you talk to them because they don't have the politicians don't knock on their door. So it's really kind of interesting to hear how they tell you how it's done where they come from, and then they ask you questions about, well, what about this? What about this? You're on the local level, so it's very interesting to hear. And I've been having this kind of internal discussion in my own mind. Is okay if you look at Gallatin and Lebanon and this kind of stuff, they don't knock on doors. I think we're in a transition period, not just how the county is organized, but also in your local politics. Is when does that point when you got to accept that you can't knock on every door, because we can't do it right now. I mean, we already can't do it.
Right.
So how do you transition going forward? What is your political campaigns going to look like as you're going forward? You know, I majored in political science at MTSU, so that part kind of fascinates me just from that analytical point of view, that just how those campaigns are going to operate going forward. Not just mine, but when I'm not doing this anymore, you know, I can't help it. That was my education. That's what it figures into. So it's really fascinating looking at that.
We need to wrap this up. Why do they need to vote for Steve Chambers? Early voting starts on the 15th.
Mm-hmm.
Election day is August the 4th.
Well, when I campaigned 4 years ago, some of the things I heard was that we needed more transparency in local government. So we created a new website, put a lot of information on there. I started streaming all our meetings live on Facebook using my own equipment. And that's transitioned to the system we have now. We put all that on Facebook and we put it on YouTube. I heard we wanted to make improvements to the park, so I applied for grants to do a master plan at the park. And then after we got the master plan, people wanted the playground fixed, so we used the master plan to apply for the local parks and recreation grant, which was originally $94,000. We were going to approve it in phases, but now the state's agreed to go up to $600,000. So we're going to be able to do Trade Park, improve it all in one go, and make it inclusive for kids with disabilities or adults with disabilities, and put new equipment in there and just work on it. As we go forward, you know, I've been working on getting planning in place for the growth we're seeing. We didn't have those in place before. Right now we're doing a 20-year master plan for our water and sewer, which we already know is aging. Our sewer system, about 60% of the flow going through our sewer plant is actually rainwater leaking into the system because we've not been maintaining it like we need to. And as this 20-year master plan gets put together, that's what we'll start doing, addressing those issues. So I've been working on the issues that people told me were important to them, and then also planning for the future, which is what we need to do. That's where the jail comes in. That's where the improving the park, the recreation opportunities, the retail recruiting, industrial recruiting, because if we can get more industry in here and more commercial businesses in here, they pay taxes at a higher rate than residential does, and so that takes some of the pressure off residential property taxes, but also more sales tax takes pressure off residential. And then if we can get increased tourism by recreation opportunities, that also brings in more sales tax and takes pressure off needing to raise property taxes.
Right.
So that's why I'd like people to vote for me. I am addressing the issues that people brought to me. If I'll be completely honest with you, if I don't know something, I'll tell you I don't know. And I try to have an open door policy. If I'm in my office, I'll talk to anybody. I'll try to answer any of your questions. And like I said, and I would appreciate your vote going forward. I'm focused on trying to get us going in the right direction and planning for growth and all that. And so that I'd appreciate your vote and support on not just the early voting on July 15th through the 30th, but also on Election Day on August 4th.
Okay. Mayor Stephen Chambers, thanks so much.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Have yourself a good day.
You too. Thank you.
We're going to